The pilot and his passenger planned to fly in his Cessna Aerobat C-150 registration Golf Sierra India India Romeo from Retford Gampston Airport, Nottinghamshire, where it was based, to Troutbeck Airfield, near Penrith, Cumbria. En route, they planned to meet a friend at Netherthorpe Airfield, South Yorkshire, who had a Mule M7 aircraft and who would fly to Troutbeck about 5 minutes ahead of them. The C-150 flew to Netherthorpe and landed on the grass runway 36, with the M7 landing about 10 minutes later. The pilot of Golf Sierra India India Romeo had not obtained the prior permission required to land at Netherthorpe before departure from Gampston. After about 50 minutes, the M7 took off from Netherthorpe, followed about 5 minutes later by the C-150 at about 11:25. The two aircraft then flew up to Cumbria. Given the M7's faster cruising speed, and the pilot of Golf Sierra India India Romeo wishing to fly a less direct route over the Lake District, the M7 landed at Troutbeck first at about 12:35. At the time, grass runway 36 was in use and the wind was from 360 at about 10 knots. As the runway was sludgy, the M7 pilot tried to call the pilot of Golf Sierra India India Romeo on his mobile phone to advise him of the runway state. However, he could not positively remember if he spoke to the pilot. After the M7 had shut down, its pilot met the airfield's owner outside the airfield's hangar. About 10 to 15 minutes later, while they were in conversation, Golf Sierra India India Romeo came into view. Given the distance, the airfield owner initially thought that it was an Aviat Husky or another M7. However, when it was overhead, he realised it was a C-150, an aircraft that he was not content to operate into Troutbeck. He ran into the hangar to get his handheld transceiver and made repeated calls on safety-com frequency 135.480 to try and ascertain what the pilot's intentions were, but there was no response. Golf Sierra India India Romeo then made an uneventful descent, approach and landing, and taxied in and parked about 80 metres from the hangar. Neither pilot had obtained PPR directly from the airfield owner to land at Troutbeck. The airfield owner was very cross with the M7 pilot, as he had made no mention that a C-150 was visiting with him, adding that it was not appropriate for one to land here in the conditions. After Golf Sierra India India Romeo had vacated the runway, the M7 pilot gesticulated to indicate where to taxi and park as the ground was rough and boggy, but the accident pilot misunderstood and parked in an area of boggy ground. After Golf Sierra India India Romeo had shut down, the M7 pilot went to speak to the pilot before he and his passenger went to the hangar. During this conversation, which was recorded by a video camera that the pilot mounted on the underside of the aircraft's right wing, the pilot referred to the flight from Netherthorpe as being very stressful. The passenger later commented that this was due to the radio being intermittent because of the terrain, having to climb and descend to avoid clouds and trying to keep up with the M7. The M7 pilot then advised Golf Sierra India India Romeo's pilot that the airfield owner was dissatisfied that the PPR had not been requested, and that the runway's condition was not suitable for operating a C-150. At the hangar, the pilot and his passenger met the airfield owner, who was annoyed with them and repeated that a C-150 should not have landed there in these conditions. The pilot was apologetic, saying he thought someone had phoned on his behalf to ask for a PPR. Given the airfield's owner's concerns about a C-150 operating from Troutbeck, he instructed Golf Sierra India India Romeo's pilot to depart solo, with his passenger departing in the M7. He added that the pilot was to use the full length of runway 36 to ensure all the takeoff distance available was used. Golf Sierra India India Romeo's pilot started his aircraft first for the return to Gampston, but due to the conditions of the ground where he had parked, he had difficulty taxiing out. He was assisted by the M7 pilot, who leant on the tailplane to take the weight off the nose wheel and push the aircraft to help it move. Golf Sierra India India Romeo was seen to taxi along runway 22, and as it got to the intersection with runway 36, turn right onto runway 36. Its engine was heard to accelerate to full power and the aircraft commenced the takeoff roll. Once airborne, the aircraft was seen to drift left of the side of the runway, yawing left with its pitch angle increasing. It appeared the pilot then started a left turn, during which the left wing dropped and the aircraft entered a near vertical dive from about 50 feet above ground level. aircraft hit the ground in an adjacent field, coming to a rest on its nose in a vertical attitude, having been airborne for just over 10 seconds. As Golf Sierra India India Romeo entered the near vertical dive, the M7 pilot and passenger realised that it was going to strike the ground and started to run towards it. Prior to reaching the aircraft, they rang the emergency services before proceeding to it to help the pilot. As they approached the aircraft, there was smoke coming from the engine, which soon dissipated. The M7 pilot found the pilot hanging by his lap straps, unconscious and not breathing. He believed the pilot did not have his shoulder harness secured. Smelling fuel and seeing some emanating from a hole in the aircraft's right wing tank, he was keen to extricate the pilot in case the aircraft caught fire. As they did this, the aircraft toppled over onto its back, coming to rest inverted. They put the pilot on the aircraft's inverted wing and, with the assistance of the emergency service on the phone, gave the pilot first aid. Paramedics and police were in attendance about 10 to 15 minutes after the accident and attended to the pilot. An air ambulance arrived soon thereafter. However, the pilot had sustained fatal injuries. For more information, please read the AAIB report, linked in the description below. Then use the comment section below to discuss this accident. I do want these videos to be used to actively think about how to become a safer pilot. Please subscribe as there are more videos on the way, and finally, do let us know how to improve these videos. Thank you.